Welcome into hardcore Penn State football. We're almost here. The whiteout, Oregon, just days away. Donnie Collins, longtime friend of the pod, joins us to break down this crucial matchup for Penn State. Just again, days away. We'll get right into it. We'll wrap up with predictions. And that's it. Very easy, but very meaty episode coming your way. Welcome into hardcore Penn State football. I'm Corey Listoki. With me, as always, the great Sean Kane. How you doing today, Sean?
Feeling ducky, Corey. How are you?
I don't like that very much. I'm going to ignore that and just go to the person that's next to me. Special guest, officially friend of the pod, definitely someone who's been on the pod the most. Welcome back, Donnie Collins. How are you doing, Donnie?
Doing well, and I'm glad that Scranton can be double represented this week. And I'm also extremely honored to be on leading up to the whiteout.
We saved you because whatever happens on Saturday, right now, optimism is at the highest it's going to be, right? I mean, nobody has their feelings hurt. Everyone's just excited. We're all on the same team, and we saved the episode right before the whiteout for you.
It's touching. It really is. It's great, and I mean that in a very real way. This is the game of the year. I mean, if they win this game, and they have obviously a legit shot, it sets you up for another run at what they fell just short of last year, and the goal that they want to hit, and the goal that they might be never this. It might be years before they're this suited again to get there. So there's a lot riding on this week, and it's kind of had it circled for a year.
Absolutely. So actually right now in my house, I'm being a pretty rude guest. My parents just arrived and my aunt and uncle just arrived. My aunt and uncle live in Nevada. They reached out to me over a year ago saying, hey, we would like to come back. You know, he went to Penn State. We'd like to come back. Is it okay if we come? And also we have two friends at Oregon friends coming. Can they come as well? But they reached out over a year in advance to book a room in our house. So this is absolutely a big deal, obviously for the people that probably listen to our show and you know, eat and breathe this stuff, but also people that don't come back as often and haven't been back for 10, 20 years. So this is a big deal.
Yeah, it's huge. I can't believe you let people from Oregon in your home this week.
So only because they had a year and a half invite, and they do have a nice Penn State comforter on their bed. So we can maybe be able to brainwash them before the weekend's over.
How full is your house this weekend?
Yeah, I mean we don't have a bed available. To put it simply, we do not have a bed available. We could find some floor space if we need to, but yeah, we're jam packed in good old Stormstown, Pennsylvania this week. Donnie. We're going to talk about the game a lot. I'm sure we're going to talk about Drew Allar a lot. I want to just lead the show. I couldn't tell you exactly when we had you on, if it was right before Drew Allar started. It might have been even his freshman year when Clifford was still around. But you and I and Sean had a conversation about Drew Allar and, you know, his potential and what he was going to be. And we'd seen some throws. So it must have been at least halfway through his freshman season there. You were very high on Drew Allar, as most of us were. I'm just curious, fast forward 3 years later, the critics, the boo birds are starting to come out. Maybe the ceiling isn't as high as we thought. Where do you stand now, 3 years later, on quarterback Drew Allar?
All right, so I'll start with the hopeful me, and maybe it's the stubborn me, because I still am extremely high on Drew. I see some things from him that you don't see in any other college football game from any other college football quarterback, and you see it every week. The Villanova game, the touchdown throw to Peña. I don't know if there's 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the country or 20 in the NFL who make that throw. And I know, and I know every fan's going to tell me it's Villanova. You should be throwing 5 touchdown passes against Villanova, and maybe that's the case. I think Penn State's trying to win some of these games. I think they've been very vanilla, but that's beside the point of this question. That throw in that situation. I think Villanova's covering that extremely well. It's on a little bit of a post there. He's got to throw it hard, spiral, on the money for Peña to get that on the run and score, and he did. That is a 99th percentile throw. And Drew makes a throw like that enough for me to say he's still the guy I thought he was. He's 6'5". He, there's Josh Allen comparisons. I don't think he's Josh Allen. I think he's Roethlisberger. I think that's kind of the comparison I'd make with him, a guy who can make every throw, a guy who can get himself into ruts. But yeah, I look at that throw and I say that's what Drew can be. And there's enough of those throws that I still say Drew could be great. My team is an NFL team looking for a quarterback in next year's draft and looking for one in the first round. And I'm not going to be ashamed if they take Drew. I think I think the best is yet to come for him. I think his potential is through the roof. The problem with Drew at this stage of his career as a senior, 4 years into the program, he started a bunch. He played a bunch as a freshman when he didn't start when Clifford was there. The problems I have with Drew is the same problem he had last year and the same problem he has as a sophomore are the same things we're seeing now. His footwork gets really sloppy. He gets sloppy in game and he gets inaccurate. It bothers me as somebody who loves to watch quarterback play, watch Drew throw a ball that is short. He should never throw a ball. He should never underthrow a ball. If he's inaccurate, okay, you could fix inaccuracy, but that's tentativeness. That's thinking. That's not stepping into a throw. That's letting your mechanics go completely off kilter on the middle of a game day. And you see that same Villanova game, and there's a stretch there in the first half where he's brutal. And I look at Drew and I'm like, that's the kind of guy, that's the kind of potential you need to win a national championship. And then you look in these little stretches in games where he's just not playing well enough to win you the Big Ten, never mind the national championship. And it happened last year in the Notre Dame game. He didn't play well enough to win that game, and they should have. I maintain that to this day. I still hear from the Notre Dame fans. Sean, you did that story with me, and how big a game that was in Scranton. And because there's so many Notre Dame fans here, and I know Penn State fans are frustrated here because they lost the game they shouldn't lose, and you lose it because Drew got careless with the football. And that's what happens to Drew. Now, do I think you win this game on Saturday with Bo Pribula? No. I don't necessarily think that gives you a win over Drew playing this game, because I think Drew's the better quarterback. I just do. And I don't buy into this stuff that, well, you need this true dual threat guy. I don't see that as the case, but you need Drew to play better. And it's to the point now where you have this finite amount of time in college, and Penn State's lucky here. You have a quarterback on campus for 4 years in an era where that doesn't happen. He's a 3-year starter. Should he be better than this? Yeah, he should. He should be more consistent than this. Is he a flop? No, he's far from a flop. He's very, very good. He could be great. And part of that's with this idea that he's a top 3 quarterback in his recruiting class or whatever it was, or 5 stars or whatever the rankings said. And he came in with a lot of expectations. But I think there's fair criticism of Drew. And do I boo him on game day? Probably not, because I think he's been such a big part of this offense for so long, when you haven't necessarily had all the weapons. But those excuses, he doesn't have this receiver or that receiver, doesn't have the receivers that Sayin does or that Will Howard did. Well, these are better receivers. Go out and do something with them. And he's got to be much more consistent. If they lose to Oregon and Drew doesn't play well, there's an issue. And I think whatever he gets is fair. But I still think he's a potential wise. I don't know if there's a better quarterback in the country for me than Drew. He can do everything. He just doesn't do any of it consistently enough, I think, right now for Penn State fans. And that's a fair criticism. But I don't think you win the national championship with Grunkemeyer, obviously, or Bo, or any of those other guys that you can get.
So totally hear what you're saying. And one of the things that Corey and I and other people have talked about too is maybe playing more with tempo, because like you mentioned, mechanics get sloppy. Sometimes it feels like he gets in his own head a little bit. Do you think playing with more tempo, more 2-minute, do you think that on a regular basis, not just in strictly 2-minute situations, do you think that is a way that, maybe they could unlock that really, really good version of Drew that we know is there more often?
Yes. I always thought that, and this is just maybe beside the whole Drew point, but I always thought you should play with tempo anyway. It prevents substitutions at the time. You get it. You can win the defense that way. And I get your defense is on the field more often, but I'd rather the points at times. And I'm not saying exclusively run tempo or NASCAR or whatever, but every once in a while, just, come out of the huddle after the timeout, and, ESPN Plus is settling back in, or wherever your Big Ten network, just go NASCAR on Villanova. Just do it. And they've done it at times. And I think that's really when the offense works best. And I do think that's when Drew works best. And you mentioned the word rhythm. And I think that's really what it is with him sometimes. He just gets out of it. And I do think he gets into his own head. You could tell, that's pretty obvious if you see him on the sidelines. He hangs his head a little bit. And that's stuff that can't happen with a veteran guy. But yeah, I think they can help him out a little bit by doing what he does well. And I wouldn't say that with Clifford. I don't think that's Clifford's game, but I think it's Drew's game. You go out and run a no huddle, run with some pace, do things like that. McSorley did it well, but I think Drew does it well too. But also, in fairness, I think maybe they're going to do that. There's no reason to show that exclusively against, even if you're planning to do it in the Big Ten, there's no reason to do that against Villanova. You could beat Villanova with just doing anything you want to do, or even Florida International and Nevada too, obviously. But yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think I would try it if I'm Andy Kotelnicki, and I'm not discounting that he might try it this week against Oregon, which would be interesting because you kind of play Oregon the way nobody plays Oregon, which is to speed up with them. And you might, but yeah, I think a 70 play Penn State team, and even in an environment like this with the rules the way they are, I think I think that helps the offense. I don't think it hurts, but I think one thing they do get kind of caught up in is how do you get the ball to everybody, and I think it's in their minds sometimes. We got to get Kyron this many touches, Nick this many touches. We have to keep Drew. I think it's at some point you got to go out there and do what's working and you go from there and make sure the rhythm is what it can be. And I don't know, I got off on a little tangent there, but if I'm Drew, I want to run no huddle. I want to get to the line, survey everything, no subs, keep everything going, run play or snap the ball quickly, because I think that's where I'm at my best. So yeah, I think that would help them. And I'm not discounting that they'll do it this week, but yeah, we haven't seen that as much as you could have seen it. And I think they should have done it at times to kind of help Drew when he's getting booed out there and clearly in a funk.
To me too, I'm in this weird spot with obviously what we've seen the last two games haven't been good enough. But I'm also wondering how much not letting him run or scramble has also got into his psyche, where he's kind of been out of rhythm a little bit. And sometimes getting popped once or twice kind of gets you into the game a little bit too. And so I'm in this weird, and I don't want to kind of like call myself a sucker, but I know we kind of know where his floor is, right? Like he may throw one interception, but he's not gonna just fall apart in a football game. So I feel like we know where his floor is at, and we're all just trying to figure out really where his ceiling is. Like in a perfect world, what is he really capable of? Is the Big Ten championship like the best you're going to get, where he might run a little bit and he might throw some laser beams and that's it, or does he have another level? And will that get unlocked this year? And why I think I'm a sucker is like we haven't seen it yet. And should we have already seen it if it's available to him? But they haven't also let him do everything yet. They're going to let him do whatever it takes to win the football game on Saturday. And so I guess I'm still a believer that there's more left in the tank, that there's more consistency to play at that high level that we have seen them play at in spurts to win massive football games. And here's my biggest concern, Donnie, as we kind of transition to the actual game itself. We have seen Penn State run for 300 yards against Oregon and still lose a football game. Now, I don't think this game matches up the exact same way as the Big Ten championship, but we do have proof in the pudding that we could theoretically run all over them and still lose a football game. And so where I'm at is like, even if we can run the ball, are we going to get enough out of Drew Allar? I feel like you have to either get more out of Drew Allar or you have to get a lot more out of the defense. And I don't know which one of those, because I think Oregon's got a fantastic football team, and Dan Lanning's done a great job scoring points with whoever he has a quarterback. And I'm just like, am I betting more on the defense playing, say, 10 to 15 points better? Or am I betting on Drew Allar playing more consistent than he did so far this season? And that's where I start getting like a brain pretzel on, are they going to be able to figure this out and win this football game if I'm trying to choose between those two things?
Yeah. I think to me, it always comes down to the quarterback. The quarterback wins these types of games. And you look at Penn State in the big game. And I think what frustrates fans, and I have no explanation for it, is they seem to be a different team in the big games than they are in the other games. Even in the moderate games, they aren't what they are against Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon last year. They play totally different than you normally see it. But I look at the quarterback, and here's another thing that gets me about Drew, and I don't want to harp on him, because I really like him. I think the guy's thrown 11 interceptions in his career, and how many of them have been huge? They seem to come at some rough times, and even in the Oregon game last year, he throws it in a bad spot, in the field, bad time in the game. Yeah, and so if you take that away, he's more consistent, and he's giving you a better chance to win. So I think consistency at that position, no matter who your quarterback is always a key. But at this point, do you have that? Is he magically going to have it? And I think it gets to a point in a man's career where he didn't do it as a sophomore, didn't do it as a junior. Now you're a couple games in. If he doesn't do it here, can he do it? And to your point, yeah, I think fans are there to the point where if he goes out there and plays a McSorley in the Big Ten championship game type of effort, they'd be surprised, right? I mean, it wouldn't be talent wise, it wouldn't be shocking, but I think people would be surprised by that, and people would take this as a huge step for him going forward. So I think he's got to play well, but on the other side of that coin too, defense can't play worse than it did in that game, but they're not going to give up that many points, you would think. So if Drew could play a little better and the defense could play up to their potential, yeah, Penn State's got a great chance to win the game. But again, and you kind of started off with this, it's a totally different game than the Big Ten championship game. It's at home. Oregon's traveling across the country. It's not on turf. Oregon's not the same team on grass as they are on turf. They haven't traditionally been anyway. And you have a situation where Penn State's the veteran team, that Oregon does not have Dylan Gabriel anymore. They don't have a whole slew of receivers who are super proven and have been superstars in the game. So I think this is a beatable Oregon team for Penn State, but it's a program and a style and the type of situation where, very interestingly, Penn State has not performed well no matter what. So yeah, Penn State's the most intriguing team in the country every year, because you don't know what you're going to get from them on a week-to-week basis, depending on the opponent. So yeah, it'll be fun for that reason. But I think I also don't think they're going to run for 300 yards. So this game, I don't know that the Big Ten championship game tells anything to me. outside of Drew has to play better than he did in that game. And that's hard to say because he played well except for a couple of throws.
So yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, I'm happy you made that point. Like, when the interceptions came, like even the USC game where I thought that was his best game, I thought he won this game. Everybody forgets, like, he had 2 terrible interceptions. One in the fourth quarter that after it happened, I was kind of like, oh, we're sunk. And thankfully we were able to make up for it. One thing that has really struck me, and it's something that I knew going into the season, but I think kind of got lost on me until this week, the experience that Penn State has versus Oregon. And I kind of keep coming back to that. Like, everybody's talking about our receivers, what they're going to do. Their cornerbacks, to be fair, have looked very good, but they're freshmen. And we have 3 seniors. So I got to think that's going to help us out in the passing game, even though those 2 guys are very talented. Brandon Finney's one of the guys Penn State really wanted a year ago. Do you look at that when thinking about how this game is going to go?
It's usually all I look at is experience. If at this level in the Big Ten, everyone's got similar talent at the top level. The Oregons, the Penn States, the Ohio States. The talent is similar. Ohio State's deeper than everybody, but you can only play 11 guys. So, you're running a talented kid out there, but you're expecting a talented kid anyway. So the depth is important as the season goes on, but in a 1-game scenario, and you're looking at 11 on 11, which is why Penn State plays well against Ohio State, is they can match them well enough talent-wise, especially in recent years. And Oregon's the same way. Now, so what breaks the talent or what breaks the tie with when you have 2 talented teams? It's usually the experience piece. And yeah, I think that is one area. And I think that's where Penn State really struggled with the receivers they had the last couple of years. And I get Trey Wallace was technically experienced, but he was kind of there. Isn't really experienced when you're the best guy when you walk onto the field. The most consistent performer when you're walking out there as a freshman. It's probably not the best kind of experience. But these guys, now granted, they all got it elsewhere, but they've had great experience. Devontae Ross has had really good experience at Troy. He's kind of got a little taste for what Penn State does through Jared Parker. And that's a big thing for Penn State to be able to get a speedster to come in who's played in big games before. He's played very well against Big Ten teams, against Iowa, and it's well documented. Trebor Peña, obviously an experienced guy at Syracuse, one of the best receivers in the ACC last year. Hudson, obviously at USC's gone through the Big Ten rigors. So that's where I think they're a little different this year. And I think that, and it comes down to Drew, of course, playing a good game, but I think Penn State should be able to get plays in the passing game because the whiteout is hard to play in. But even more, it's hard to go across the country to play in a big game, which is really your first, maybe your 5th big game, depending on what 4 you played in the year before, or if you played the year before. When you got some freshmen out there, and as talented as they are, I mean, they're not in that environment ever. So you're putting kids who are good but not experienced in an environment where that really invites struggles. So I think Penn State's experience at positions where they didn't have experience in years past is a big deal. And I guess you could look at that and say, well, what's their experience at tight end? But I still think somehow Penn State's very experienced at tight end. I think Penn State very experienced on the offensive line, even though they haven't been extremely dominant this year. They've been, what you're expecting out of them. This is a group, position by position, player by player, that is going to out-experience Oregon. So I think that almost has to make a difference. If it doesn't make a difference, Penn State's going to lose. But it's one of those situations where I think if you're James Franklin, you'd want his roster over Dan Lanning's, and that's has nothing to say about the talent that Oregon has. Obviously, it's a top 5 program in the country talent-wise. So I think you have to take advantage of being there, having been through it before, and experiencing, if not the whiteout, then big games.
Oregon has an opportunity to be like their team, if not this year, next year, is just insanely good. Like, top 5 talent right now. Next year, they're going to probably bring another top 5 class on top of a top 5 class they just had. That's the old stacking classes that Sean and I always like to talk about. And stacking classes is going to lead to really good teams. Like, one class isn't going to get you there, but being able to stack multiple classes in a row is what makes you really special. This team is insanely talented. And to your point, Donnie, like, Penn State should be very happy they're playing them this year than next year, because next year they're going to be even better. And you're right. I hope experience means something. And I think most importantly, and you hit on it, experience at wide receiver has to mean something, because those younger cornerbacks probably at the end of their careers are going to probably have better careers and probably better pro careers than Penn State's wide receivers. But Penn State is getting them, 3 seniors versus young freshmen. Like, you're hoping just maybe right now we're better than them. And maybe not next year, maybe not the year after that, but right now, Kyron Hudson has to find a way to get open and win jump ball catches. Trebor Peña has to be able to, catch those balls over the middle, even though we haven't thrown a ton. And like Devontae Ross, even though he's not as fast as Amari Evans, has to find ways to, have big explosive plays, whether that's actually literally outrunning people or that's, which they haven't done a ton of yet, letting him be elusive. And they really haven't given him that many opportunities to do that. So I'd be curious if they do that more. But they have to do that. Like, this is why you brought those guys in. To your point, they were looking at the receiving room, and they're like, we could potentially have Trey Wallace, and then what? Tysier Denmark is the most experienced person after that. They have to be able to do that, and experience has to matter. Otherwise, you're right. Penn State is in a world of hurt. But you're right. Overall, like, I just think about, like, and maybe it's a good transition to Oregon's offensive line that I think is such a fascinating matchup, because you can have all the great weapons. Because I think Dante Moore is something special too, and DeCorian Moore on the outside is very good, and Benson's very good as well, and then of course Kenyon Sadiq is very good. But none of that matters if Dante Moore doesn't have time to throw. And I do think the 2 offensive tackles for Oregon who transferred in, although they have experience, don't have experience like this. And again, I'm like, none of that stuff on the outside matters if the defensive line can have their way with the Oregon offensive line. So that to me is another thing where, like, experience, I really hope matters. And Dennis-Sutton and Zane Durant, and I know Zariah Fisher's been hurt, but Zariah Fisher and Alonzo Ford Jr., like, these guys have played a lot of football and meaningful football over the last couple of years. They have to be able to do it up front, because if we're in a game where we saw it last year in the Big Ten Championship, if we're not getting enough pressure, like, I don't have, even though it might be our best cornerbacks secondary we've had in a long time, I still don't have a lot of faith going up against a Will Stein offense and Dan Lanning if Dante Moore's sitting back there just picking us apart. Like, we have to win up front, especially in the passing game. And again, I hope experience leads us to victory in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. This has to be, look at the guys who have to be good this week. Dennis-Sutton is right at the top of the list. Maybe the number one factor for them, because what Oregon did last year in the championship game is they got rid of the ball quickly. They have such a good scheme that they knew what they were going to do, and they had a quarterback who was, again, use that term again, experienced, and he could read the defense, knew what he saw on film, and translated it to what he saw on the actual field. This is a little different scenario with Penn State, because I don't know that we've seen everything in the bag of tricks from Jim Knowles. I'm assuming we haven't, and that he's got some different stuff to show Oregon this week than they saw last year. And he has a history with him. He's beaten, or he's handcuff that offense. So let's see where that is. But I would assume Oregon's going to score points this week. They're going to be able to move the football because that's what Oregon does, and they're going to move it with pace. And there's only so much when you are snapping the ball and getting rid of it quickly that your cornerbacks could do. So when your cornerbacks are as good as Penn State's are, 1, 2, 3, 4, all of those guys are tremendous players. There's only at that point you're really tackling and just trying to stay with them as close as you can and minimize gains and yards after catch and things like that. So what they have to do is they number one have to get explosion off the edge from Dennis-Sutton. And the second guy who has to really play well, and you mentioned, is Durant. He's got to get something going up the middle and be able to stop the running attack or at least get them to think that they're not going to be able to just move it all day on the ground and keep Penn State's offense on the sideline. So those two guys I think are big. Obviously, Drew's another one, and you could take any of those receivers you want. I would take Ross. I think Ross has to have a big game, but you look at them; they're all veteran guys. And nobody's saying Chaz Coleman has to dominate this game because if you're in that position, then obviously you're in trouble anyway, or you're an underdog. You're a heavy underdog, and you're not a national championship contender. National championship contenders rely on their seniors in games like this. So guys like Dennis-Sutton and Durant and Drew, and even a guy like DeLuca on special teams, or when you get he's a propensity for getting turnovers. Go out and get a turnover in a game like this. So I think, when you look at what you have to do to beat Oregon, Penn State's got the players to do it. They have them at the right positions. They could rush the passer. They can make this a challenge for Dante Moore. But yeah, it's going to be, could you take advantage of mismatches? And yeah, I think Penn State has some mismatches experience wise with wide receivers against those two corners who are freshmen, and I think they have some mismatches off the edge with their experience against those Oregon tackles. But Durant's got to play well too, and this is a big week for the defensive line. I think they've played well so far. I had big concerns about them, especially in the middle after Durant. I like the way 54 has played, and 39 has been really good. Those guys are good players, and 50 as well. They've stopped the run, but this is a much different animal. So let's see what they got. But it's still, when you got Durant, you got Dennis-Sutton, you should be able to control the line of scrimmage in a game like this, and you have to win games. You have to win the big game.
Sean, I want to ask you a question. I posed this on X. And we've done this kind of train of thought, I feel like, a decent amount when it comes to these bigger games. The four scenarios of, an Oregon blowout, an Oregon close win, a Penn State close win, or a Penn State blowout. Rank those likely scenarios for me, because I feel like that may give me an idea of where your thoughts are in this football game.
Okay. I feel like I might be giving my prediction away a tad.
Maybe if you go Penn State blowout, Penn State win, maybe.
All right. So I think the least likely scenario, and keep in mind, I kind of think, Corey, all these can happen. Like, yes. I could see a world where, our offense really does have all these issues and we get beat like 45-21. I could see it. I don't think it'll happen. I could also see, oh, wow, we were really holding a lot back. Our offensive line has woken up. Drew looks great, managed the game effectively, and we end up winning probably like a 38-20 type game. But I do think those are two least likely scenarios. I'll go Penn State blowout, least likely. Oregon blowout, third likely. And then 1 and 2, you'll have to wait for the prediction.
So it's in, because I don't see it that way, right? I honestly see a world where I honestly see a Penn State blowout more likely than a Penn State close win. Because from what I have seen with the history of Drew Allar, and to some degree even James Franklin, like, I would take Dan Lanning and their team in a close game. But I also think if Drew Allar does take that next step and that defense does pretty well, now I'm in a situation where, well, they can start rolling this thing pretty quickly. Like if Allar is able to take some of the pressure off of the running game and the running game's cooking and he throws a couple touchdowns and takes care of the football and the defense is able to get a couple big stops, they're going to get a turnover or two in the whiteout. Like that's going to happen. Like they could roll on this pretty quickly. And we've seen the snowball effect happen, and we don't know what kind of quarterback Dante Moore is yet. I feel confident, maybe too confident, that a Penn State team would also not get blown out, in the sense that I feel like I know Drew Allar's floor, and I don't think he would completely just collapse and melt down to the point where it's over. We've seen Oregon jump on Penn State, even jump on Drew Allar, and we've seen them kind of scrap back into it. Also, it's a whiteout, and I just feel like no one's done that to Penn State in a whiteout environment before. That would be amazing, and I would probably have Oregon as the team to beat in the country, and Dante Moore probably should win the Heisman. But if it's a close game and maybe Drew Allar hasn't done anything and Penn State's only in the game just because of the running game, now do I necessarily feel great in a Drew Allar who's, let's just say, 13 for 27 on the game so far with the football with 2 minutes to go down and score a touchdown? Not really. I don't really love that scenario very much. And all we've done so far is run the football. I don't love that one bit. So I think I would say, for me, a Penn State blowout more likely than a Penn State win, and an Oregon win more likely than an Oregon blowout.
Okay. And define blowout for me.
Yeah.
I would say, I think it's different for both teams. I would say if Oregon wins by more than 13, I would consider it a blowout. If Penn State wins by more than 17, I would consider it a blowout. Because I feel like blowing out somebody on the road is different than blowing somebody out at home. If that makes sense. It's maybe illogical. But I feel like a 14-point win in the whiteout is very impressive for a team on the road versus a 14-point win at home in a whiteout, where we could say maybe a whiteout's worth 7 points. I wouldn't consider a 14-point win a blowout for Penn State.
Okay.
Would you consider a 38-17 win or a 38-17 lead late in the fourth where Oregon scores 38-24? Would you consider that a blowout?
I would.
No.
That's what
I would, if you want to little, split hairs there, I would say 38-17, absolutely a blowout. I would say 38-24, not so much. But I mean, at that point, do we have everybody in there? Because damn straight they'll try to get somebody else in there as fast as they're able to. But generally speaking, no, I would say a 14-point win would not consider a blowout for me, for Penn State, but it would for Oregon.
In a game like this, I don't think if that scenario happened, I actually don't think they would try to get everybody in. I think James Franklin wants that number one spot. That's something he hasn't gotten before. And as much as a coach would never admit that means anything, I think he'd really want that. And I think he would get it if Penn State did blow out Oregon.
So there you go. Then it would end up 38-17 because they wouldn't let him in the end zone.
Conceivably, yeah.
What do you think, Donnie?
Am I ranking them?
Or whatever you want.
I actually think it's a blow. I think the blowout either way is the top two. I don't think this will be a close game either way. Either Penn State doesn't have it, and what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is what they really have.
Right.
And they're just not going to play well enough to beat Oregon. I don't think what they.
That's kind of how I feel too, Donnie.
In the first couple of weeks, they haven't done enough to beat Oregon close. But if they've got something extra, then I think they could overpower them and win it big. And I think it really depends on that. So what Penn State team do we get? Is it similar to what we've seen or similar to what we expect? If we get what we expect, I think Oregon's gonna have problems. I don't think they have the experience. I think it's a real challenge coming across the country to play in the whiteout. And I think Penn State special teams, nobody ever talks about special teams. I love special teams. Special teams are really, really good. So I think they should conceivably be able to control field position, make it a little harder on Oregon. But they'll be able to kick some longer field goals. I think we've seen that from Barker. But Yeah, I don't see a close game either way. I see Penn State's not what we expect, and they get blown out, which perfectly conceivable outcome. But just as conceivable an outcome is that Penn State's going to blow the doors off of this team, and the whiteout, it's possible, and it's something you brought up, Corey, that I think is interesting. If Penn State is in that position to blow out Oregon, can they do it? They've never been able to do that in a big game. They've never been able to step on your throat
on the neck. Yep.
and keep it there. So that's going back to, when was the last time they did? When was the last time they overpowered
Utah?
a team in a big game?
Utah, Rose Bowl?
Yeah, Utah.
Yeah, but that's not I don't think that's this big a game.
Damn it, Donnie, we're not going to talk about big games yet. We'll wait till the offseason.
Oh, we can really get Corey going on big games.
Nobody thinks anything's a big game anymore. That's all.
Yeah,
I'm
we
saying.
can really get Corey. We could have a whole podcast about that.
I'm not. The Rose Bowl is always a big game, but this is an important game. That Penn State could lose that Rose Bowl, and no, you would have slept just fine the night after. This one, I'm not sure you're gonna be able to sleep well.
I gotta say, the Peach Bowl doesn't keep me up at night.
No, the Peach Bowl
was in that game.
Yeah. No, but I do
forgot
think
I was
if we
there.
would have
Gone.
If we would have won the Peach Bowl, or I think the, you know what? I'm not gonna get into it. We'll wait till the off season. I'm not gonna get into it. I'm gonna bring it back down. I'm just curious, Donnie. Like we talked about, maybe that's your answer, but it made me think about it. You talked about special teams. We did talk special teams with Dale Bliss on the Monday show, which Dale did a fantastic. We've got, no offense to Donnie, we've gotten an amazing amount of positive feedback from Dale Bliss. Probably the best behind enemy lines or guests we've had on about previewing another team. He's just fantastic. So that was cool. But he did bring up special teams, and Oregon has good special teams too. So I'm curious about that because the whiteout typically does have a big special teams play that almost screws Penn State or does screw Penn State, and then also maybe gets them back into it. So and what I was going to ask though is, do you have like an X factor or somebody or a stat or something that you're like, if they do this, they'll probably win, or I think this person, if they play well, they'll probably win. Is there someone or something, and it could be on Oregon side, I don't care, but I'm just curious, something you're paying attention to early on, like, oh, he's cooking, Penn State's in a good spot, or oh, he's cooking, Penn State's screwed.
My most proud moment as the beat writer for Penn State was when I predicted when I was doing my breakdown of the 2017 game against Ohio State, and I predicted Barkley will return the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and he did it. And I
didn't know that.
I almost stood up and cheered for myself in the press box. You're not allowed to cheer for anybody, but it would have been myself. But I have a sense that there's a big special teams play coming from Ross. I think he's the X factor in the game. I think he'll make two big plays, one on offense, one on special teams, and not giving my prediction away, but yeah, he's my X factor in this game. I like what I've seen from him in flashes. On the punt return, I like what I've seen. I love what I've seen from him in the past, and guys like that to me are big game players, and I don't know if you get the best out of them against Villanova. I think you get the best out of them in weeks like this, because this is, you have to kick it into another gear to play with these kind of guys. And I think there's another gear to this kid. And I think he's got a return in him this week. I'm not saying it's for a touchdown, but it's going to be a big game shifting. Maybe it's early, maybe it's late when it's close, but yeah.
I love that.
Sean, do you have a X factor, X person that comes to mind for you?
I do. Guy that I really, really liked what he's done since he's gotten here this time around, King Mack. I think King Mack won that other safety job. I think he's going to make a big play in this game. He's been playing. He looks confident. He looks like he knows. He looks like he's just learned a lot from adversity. And I love guys like that are talented, struggled, but it looks like the light came on. And he just looks so confident returning the ball, and as a safety, I think he's going to get an interception this week. Maybe that's my bold prediction too.
Okay, I'll go on Oregon just to keep it fun. but I think kind of plays a little bit into what you just spoke about with King Mac. I think what they do or don't do versus tight end Kenyon Sadiq is probably one of the most biggest indicators if Penn State's going to win this football game. They can't allow him to have the first quarter he had in the Big Ten. That was like the most deflating thing ever. I was at hunting camp and I just sat down with a beer and a belly full of cheese, and I was like, oh, we guess we're not going to stop that guy today. That can't happen. Talk about something that would deflate the whiteout and give Oregon a pretty even playing field for the rest of the game is if he does what he did in the first quarter last year. And he's great blocking as well. I'm very curious to see what specifically Jim Knowles' plan is with him, how much they use a linebacker. Like, I'm a little bit nervous about Rojas trying to cover him all the time. And, like, I don't know how I would feel about King Mac covering him some, or does AJ Harris come inside some to cover him? Do they trust Wheatley to cover him all the time? I'm very curious to see how they defend him. I'm sure it's going to be a mixture of all of that. But if they don't stop him early, that's not a good sign. If they do, if we're in like the second quarter and he hasn't touched the football yet, maybe starting to feel a little bit better about that. But that's a guy to me, and I don't really consider him like Tyler Warren where like you can feed him, but he's the kind of guy where he doesn't need, 20 touches. But if he just gets one or two in space, like that is a nightmare scenario for Penn State. So I'm watching Kenyon Sadiq, and I'm sure he's going to have his, but can they limit it, especially early on in the game?
Yeah, and I like what you said about early on, because both Lanning and Franklin talked about starting fast, and I really think the team that starts fast, like that gets up to that first lead, they're going to win. For Penn State,
they're going to start so fast. They're going to start the game in the second quarter. That's how fast these teams want to start. We're going to be in the second quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd be able to sit on the lead, and I think that's something Penn State would be very comfortable doing. And Oregon could kind of do what they did last year, and even though we made a comeback, they were still able to make enough plays to keep a healthy distance from us. Even though it was technically a one-score game, they were still able to keep us at arm's length.
Excellent. Gentlemen, are we ready to get into our predictions?
Ready.
Let's do it.
Donnie, you're the guest, so we're going to make you go first. Please, I guess you kind of gave us a bold prediction already with Devontae Ross. So please, the floor is yours. What do you think is going to happen? And please give us a score so I can write that down and hold it against you forever.
That's exactly that's why they pay me the big bucks here. But yeah, I think it's a blowout either way. I think, as I said earlier, but I really feel like this is Penn State's week. They have the game at home. They have the experience advantage. They have the talent to win this game. Now, is Dan Lanning going to come up with something and James not? Maybe. That's history. That's what I think a lot of fans, that's the nightmare scenario, right? So I don't see it happening that way. I just, there's something different about this team. And I know they were unimpressive in 3 blowouts. If you can be unimpressive in blowouts, they're not putting up fantasy football numbers, but they're doing what they have to win these games. And I think they'll do what they have to win this game. And they know what they can count. They know they can run the ball on this team. I think Drew's got another gear he's going to hit. And I think these receivers are a big deal in a game like this. So I think it's, again, blowout either way. And I don't know if you're going to count this as a blowout, but I had 30. If you want, we'll make it a blowout. We'll make it a blowout by your standards. We'll go 38-21. Penn State.
What was your original before you?
38-24.
Interesting.
But I just think everybody's going to kick a field goal. So I never just give touchdowns out.
If you're going to bet on anything, Ryan Barker kicking a field goal seems like easy money. I don't think you're probably able to prop bet for that. But if there's a prop bet for Ryan Barker making a field goal, I would probably put my life savings on that, even if I only would make $5 off of it.
He's been dynamite this year.
That seems like an easy bet for sure. 38-21. By the way, an Oregon fan almost got the stat right when they were tweeting at us this week. Dan Lanning has never lost as a head coach with a team scoring less than 33 or 33 or less. So they lost to Washington in the Pac-12 championship and Washington had scored 34. So just keep that in your back pocket. That 34 is the magic number for Penn State, as at least history would say.
That's amazing.
Yes. Sean, what you got?
All right. So kind of like I said earlier, we've kind of come full circle, right? Because we hyper analyze these first 3 games, and I think everybody could agree if Penn State's offense looks like they did in the first 3 games, we're not going to win this game. But I kind of go back to what I said at the beginning of the season, and how I feel about this game ends up being exactly how I felt going into the season, in that I think Penn State, this is why all these guys came back, right? This is why Dennis-Sutton came back, Drew Allar, Singleton, Kyron, maybe also to work on the draft stock, but also to win games like this. They didn't come here to beat Rutgers. They came to win these games. I think there's a little bit of revenge in the back of their minds, because I do think in their mind, if Penn State starts better last year, we probably win the Big Ten championship game, but not the way it happens. So we get them at home. We have the more experienced team. I think top to bottom, we have the better roster. We have depth where you really want it. And I'm going to stick with my preseason prediction. I'm going to pick Penn State to win this game. I think Penn State wins 34-26. I'm not entirely sure where I got the 26 from, but I'm thinking about Saquon this week, maybe. So I'm going Penn State 34-26. Bold prediction. I'll make the original prediction I had about King back a little spicier. I'll say he gets a pick 6. That'll be the bold prediction.
I like it, Sean, and I like the 26. I think that's fun. I don't even remember the final in the Big Ten championship, but didn't they lose by 8?
I think we lost by 8 too. I had that
so there you
as
go.
well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Donnie and I are a little bit more aligned on this, just based off of the conversation we were having just a second ago. I really do think this Penn State football team's good. And I will fully admit, and we will have a very depressing and very angry episode on Monday if it's not true. But this is the moment, right? This is the time to shine. There's Drew Allar, all of the, sitting behind Clifford, and then the last 2 years has built up to this moment. They went out and got 3 guys in the transfer portal for these moments. Dennis-Sutton, Nick Singleton, Kyron Allen. A lot of these guys came back for these sort of moments. And part of me in my mind just refuses to believe that what we've seen so far is the best they've got. And I don't think you want the best they've got to show up any earlier than it has so far. So I think you don't want to peak. Even after this game, you probably don't want to peak. So I have to just optimistically think that they have something else that they haven't shown so far. And I don't necessarily mean the play calling, but I got to imagine that there's more out there in the tank, and they've got more to show. Specifically, and that's a name that I don't think we mentioned tonight, I think Nick Singleton has it. I don't think he just randomly lost it. I don't think he just all of a sudden is not a good running back anymore. And I have a lot of confidence in Nick Singleton because he's been doing it for a long time. I think Nick Singleton reemerges. He's my bold prediction. I have him over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think Penn State wins this game 41-24, and they get the job done. Drew Allar, I don't think, has insane numbers, but he's more than serviceable. He makes a handful of big plays. He makes a couple of plays with his feet, and he holds on to the football. And I'll just throw in a little note there that I have teased twice now. The Oregon punter is the Boise State punter from last year. And if anybody, and I think Franklin talked about this a couple weeks ago, talking about punters, and you sometimes want to do the rugby stuff and sometimes you don't want to because they'll figure out where you're going to be punting the ball from if you do the same thing over and over again. Maybe he was thinking about it. Maybe he was just handed a special teams report in preparation for Oregon. But I just got a weird feeling that there's going to be some irony there, and they block a punt in this football game. It would be the most like James Franklin, like Donnie Collins just said, where he stood up in the press, like that'd be the most James Franklin moment where he could be like, yes, knew that was going to happen. So that's what I got. And I will like have the most egg on my face if they end up getting blown out 41-24. But God damn it, guys. Like they have like, I hate going back to the if now when, if not now then when thing, because it's been a couple years of that. But this is a final good segue into the whole big win thing that we're not going to talk about tonight. We defend Franklin a lot on this show, but this game, is a massive opportunity for James Franklin. And he has to take advantage of this. He has to. And honestly, maybe in 5 weeks, people don't even consider this a big game because that's typically what they like to do if Penn State wins it. But right now, in this moment, don't you think they just have to find a way?
Yes.
Yes.
There's a lot invested in this team. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
This is a team. This was the recruiting class that they went all in on. This is the, how do I put this one? This is the class that they've invested their NIL in, and they've built the roster and then under the new rules to keep these guys together. Yeah, they got to win the game. Then you got a lot more questions than can James win the big one. It's can James build the roster. It's are these players any good? And I don't think those are questions anybody wants to be asking or to be asked to themselves. And I think we're at the stage here where it's let's go get it done. And a lot of needless excuses over the years, a lot of reasons for not winning big games. Those reasons don't exist right now. Yeah, it's got to be done.
Sean, you and I talk a lot about wounded animal mode, and I always use that for like Notre Dame coming back home and playing Purdue last week after 2 losses. Like they were in wounded animal mode, right? They had to win that football game, and no one was really expecting them not to. But doesn't it almost feel like Penn State's in wounded animal mode, even though they haven't lost the game?
Yeah, in a lot of ways we are. And look, I think Penn State has, even though Franklin's like, well, things aren't really different here, from last year to this year. But at the same time, I think this is the first time you've seen a departure, like those first 3 games, a little bit of a departure away from the 1-0 mentality. And part of that is I think Penn State knows they're really, really good. And they were able to get away with, like Donnie said tonight, Jim Knowles definitely not showing everything he has. How do I know that? Because Ohio State was their defense was way different last year. He showed a little bit, but not a whole lot. And I think the focus is really this game, right? Because let's say we win. Is that Ohio State game a must win then? No, absolutely not. Let's say we lose. That Ohio State game, maybe not a must win because we could probably still slide in with 10-2, but there's going to be a collective, and I worry this could trickle through the locker room. Here we go again. And I worry about that. It doesn't really matter what we think, but what those guys think and you hear things, you just better win this game because it's going to set you up for the rest of the year, win or lose. And look, Indiana looks pretty good. And if I don't even want to think about a 9-3 season, but that would be a calamity if that happened. And the way you steer clear of that is just get it done this week. And then we are really, really set up for the rest of the year.
You also don't want a 10-2 season where the win is against Indiana.
Yep. Yeah. Because people will be like, oh, you beat Indiana. Woo. Yep.
Donnie, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I think I like my sleeper of the game, my X factor. I gave it away too early, but yeah, I think it's a major game psychologically for Penn State, philosophically for Penn State. It's a defining moment for the plan. It's a defining moment for James Franklin. I think this is it's just a game you have no excuses to lose. And I disagree with the wounded animal thing a little bit, because I think Penn State needs to play like the bigger, badder animal. I think that's what we're going to see. I know there's more to this team than we've seen. I know that they've done what they thought they could do to win the games and advance and stay healthy and all that. But right now, you have to go out and take an opponent you should beat, that there is a certain segment of the population doesn't think you should beat, and just drive them into the ground. I think they have that potential too. And we haven't seen that potential this year. We haven't seen it in recent years, but I think this week is the week. There's a last time for everything. I think this is the last time Penn State goes into a game with this "you can't win a big one" attitude. I think they erase it all this week.
Big game, James. It's going to mean something different, hopefully, on Monday.
Either way, I'm tweeting "Big Game James" after this game, either congratulatory or sarcastically. Either way, that tweet's loaded up.
That's fantastic. Hey, Donnie, just a heads up. When I end this, you will need to just pause for a second. It will do a little upload. It will let you know when you can close it. But before we get out of here, Donnie, please, where can people find you? Please plug away.
I'm still at Penn State TT on Twitter, working on some podcasting stuff for the future. So I'll just visit me there, and I'll keep you posted. Hopefully, it won't be too long.
Yeah, hopefully not. Yeah, like hearing your voice. That's for sure. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching Hardcore Penn State football. Until Monday, have a very whiteout weekend. Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.